4 p.m. Central Time, and we're just excited to be here. Again, we have a special guest, and we always have a special guest, but every time, every show, we picking it up, bringing it up, bringing it up. So we want to thank you guys for all your support and tuning in. We would like for everyone to please share this video. So I'm going to actually jump on right now on my page and make sure that I create my watch party, but please make sure you get onto yours and you create a party. Support us, support the people and the guests that we do have here on the Black Podcast. Because again, it's about sharing knowledge and reaching out to some people that you know so that we can all grow together. But I am your host, Dr. Sherelle Hobson, and I'm your student athlete resilience coach, athletic program enthusiast, an author, athletic director. And so I just really enjoy helping high school coaches increase their team's matriculation by 90%. You know, many people believe that a lot of times when our students are in sports and they're just focused on that and not looking at the academic side, and sports really help to shape the character of our young, especially our young men. So I really like to help coaches to create programs that are going to benefit them long term and not just worrying about that temporary fix or getting that glam of, you know, being a part of a football team or a basketball team in high school, but end up being someone who is successful later on in their life. Many of you know that I have my doctorate in sports administration and leadership, and my study was on African American males and their educational plans and the effects of athletics and how they correlate. So it's something that I'm very passionate about. What I do enjoy, as well as speaking and being an author of 2 books, where I really help people to acknowledge where their current space at and provide them with the tools to sustain that resiliency through the process. Because we know that every challenge is a process, whether it takes you a day or it takes you a year. I just really enjoy working with our people in our community. So my plans and my vision and my passion is to always be productive in the Black community.
Yes, and my name is Brian Street. I just love being here every single week. It's just every single week that we're here and we're able to have someone new to help share that we're not a monolith, that we all have our own story, that we all are unique. But regardless of who you are, you can create your own story as well. And you can be the narrator. You can be the illustrator. You can be the one that portrays it exactly the way that you want to portray. But a lot of times you need to have examples of what is possible for you. So I'm glad that we're able to have today's guest on. But before we introduce her, like I said, Brian Street, founder, CEO of Your Legacy Begins Now, a company that I started a few years back to really bring together a collective of partnerships to generate revenue that is going in part towards development and sustainability of transitional age adolescent mentoring programs. One thing that you may have heard over the last couple of weeks with us giving some updates is the fact that we're really looking to get into a lot of colleges and universities to really pour our wealth of experience plus traditional and self-education into that next generation. One of my major focuses right now is an initiative that I'm calling the Black Economic Initiative, whereas we're training our community, teaching, coaching, mentoring our community on the necessity of practicing group economics so that we can really start to support one another and then work our way up that scale as far as being able to get more leaders in the community that understand what our needs are, to get more political figures in the community that really understand like how to serve us, to eventually get the education system to be reflective of our history as well. So that's one of the areas I'm really focused on. Currently 2 years deep and a doctorate myself. Haven't quite made it to where Dr. Hobson is, but it's definitely in the future. And just aiming to use this platform as well as every other thing that I do to positively impact that next generation. Now, the young lady that we are about to introduce to you guys, I had to watch it a few times. She has a series that she does. I had to watch it a few times because it's very touching, but at the same time, it's it's uplifting based off of where it's said. And I'm I'm a former athlete myself, so I really admire so much of what it is that she represents. But one of the things in her story that a lot of us probably heard about, but we're going to be able to get like an inside look today. So without further ado, drum roll, we have Patience Murray in the building.
Thank you for having me today.
Thank you for coming.
Well, I appreciate the introduction, and honestly, if anybody did see like the Sincerely Patience documentary, it's like a docu-series, but it was about our experience, me and my husband, just going through the battles and then overcoming them, but figuring out ways to create your own opportunities throughout those experiences. And I will back up a little bit. So I'm a survivor of the Pulse nightclub shooting that took place in Orlando, Florida on June 12th. And that experience alone has shaped me as a woman entirely. And it was just a regular night. And I like to just say what it is, like what the experience is, so you can put yourself in my shoes, because it was a regular girls' night. Think about that. Going out to the club on vacation. And it was actually my first time going to Orlando on a family vacation. And it wasn't even my family, it was my friend's family's vacation. So I was really excited. I'm from Philadelphia originally, born and raised, and I pretty much grew up in, a really hard family situation. So when I got extended the invitation to go with my friend on her family vacation, I was ecstatic, right? So the first night that we actually got to Orlando, we were all tired, but we ended up wanting to go out to a club just to have some fun and, make new memories. We just Googled 18 and up clubs in Orlando, and Pulse was one of the clubs that actually came up. We went there. It was at the very end of the night, and I have to express this. It was the very end of the night. So imagine having an amazing time with your friends, like really making movie moments, and then all of a sudden you hear gunshots going off everywhere, and people just start going crazy. Like it was super chaotic. People started running back and forth, running into the bathrooms. There was people dropping to the floor. And then in that moment, you just think, like, is this really happening to me? Like, is this happening to us? Like, is this happening right now? And it happened on vacation. It's like, well, you think you're supposed to be safe on vacation, but the reality is hardships and adversity can hit you at any given time. And how you respond to those hardships and how you respond to that adversity is what shapes you. And through those experiences, it made me and my husband a lot closer. So my husband and I weren't actually interested in each other before the shooting actually happened. So I actually met him probably like a year before the shooting happened, and he was just not on my radar. I wasn't on his. It wasn't until after the shooting happened, after he lost his sister, and her name is Akira Murray, if you guys aren't aware. But it was three of us. So it was Akira, Tiara, and myself. We were the girl group going out that night, and Akira unfortunately didn't make it. And through that grief that my husband had, it was just so much pain. And I feel like our pain is really what connected us more than anything. And let me know if I'm rambling or not. I just want people to understand like the full scope of the severity of like what happened. In addition to that, it's just having that conversation with him in the very beginning, just talking to him and just really becoming each other's best friend throughout that time to help deal with each other's pain. It was difficult. Oh my gosh, it was so difficult, especially trying to have a relationship with not only another hurt individual, but being hurt yourself. And we've all heard, hurt people, right? That's exactly what happened. So we were just in a cycle of pain and hurting one another and stuff. It was really, really sad. And it was a terrible time for the both of us. But with God, with prayer, with leaning on our family, leaning on knowledge that superseded ours, it helped us a lot. And we started to focus on not so much the pain that we experienced, but how can we create a different narrative now? And fast forward, so many years later, it almost feels like surreal that this experience happened, but I know that it's a greater purpose for that happening, even though it was super, super traumatic. And honestly, my leg still hurts every day. So I was actually shot in both of my legs. and the bullet that entered my right leg actually shattered my femur. If anybody knows where your femur bone is, it's very important. It's a very important bone in your leg, so it completely shattered, right? So they had to put a metal rod, screws in my leg, and at that point, I was just like, you know what, God, why? Why did this have to happen? Why did Akira have to die? Why did I have to get shot and then survive to live with the aftermath, the memories, and the trauma that came along with that? So it was a long period of just asking God why. But I feel like now, in 2021 especially, with the way 2020 just went with COVID and all of this craziness, it just prepared me for where I am now as a woman, as a wife, as a stepmother. I'm also a stepmother. I have a 5-year-old stepdaughter. Her name is Ari. And this is a picture of the three of us. This is one of our wedding photos. I wanted to show you guys. So it just goes to show that beautiful things can come from tragedy.
Yeah. Well, we're just so grateful that you shared your story with us, because you know, when you read something, it's one thing, but when you have to experience it, it's a whole nother ball game. And
Absolutely.
so, with that, where you're at right now, and just how it all went through, when you go back to when you were just young, back in Philly, what was that? Explain that experience to us, like how you grew up. Um, and you know where you went to, just how you got to where you're at right now. So who are you, where did it start, and then we'll just go from there. So I want to know a little more about you and your life and your story prior to this traumatic event, and then you being, you know, where you're at now.
Okay. Yeah, I'm glad you asked me that because nobody really cares that much about the pre-story. They only care about the main story, right? So I'm from Philadelphia, PA, aka Philly. I know I don't sound like it, but I really am. I'm from Philadelphia. I'm from North Philadelphia. I was raised in West Philadelphia as well, and I went to University City High School for 3 years, and then the city actually shut down my high school in when I was just finished my 11th grade. So my entire high school got shut down, and I had to go to a new high school, School of the Future. I ended up graduating at the top of my class, but a lot of that academic success was fueled by the fact that my family structure was so fractured, right? So my mom wasn't in my life. That was a huge one. My mother actually disappeared when I was 2 years old. So I have no idea, even to this day, like where my mother is. I have no idea if she's alive or dead. So just having that weight over my life, my entire life, was something that I had to struggle with. And a part of that is also not having that peace, that huge peace in your life, also adds into how you view yourself and self-love, right? So it was a lot of questions that I had about my own existence that I couldn't get those answers because I didn't have like my mom. I didn't have my mom. And my father, unfortunately, as much as I love him, you know, he had a lot of downfalls, and he had a lot of demons that he was battling with, and he still is battling with them to this day. And it pains me to say this, but even after a while, I had to distance myself from my own father. So it's like you get one parent, even though one parent is gone, you at least have the other parent, and then the other parent is dropping the ball. So it's like, okay, now you're in this life on your own. But luckily, I had grandparents. My grandmother actually raised me until I was 12, and then she died from leukemia. So it's like one thing after another, right? And this is my upbringing. This is my upbringing. Then after my grandmother passed away from leukemia, she was the only mother I really knew. After that, I had to get bounced around to different family homes because, you know, it's either you go to the system or you go live with somebody that, you know, you have a family connection with. And I did that. Unfortunately, that was also a tumultuous road as well. I had an experience living with my aunt. I call her my crazy aunt. I'm not going to name her at all, but it was a really horrible experience, and I cannot even sugarcoat that. But it just goes to show again the pain that my aunt had experienced. She took that out on me. So throughout my entire life, I was experiencing adversity after adversity after adversity after adversity. And then I finally got my grades together. I was a straight A student in high school, and I made sure I used every opportunity to get a better education, and so I could leave Philadelphia. As much as I love Philadelphia, it's so much pain connected to my city. It's just so sad, but I was grateful for the opportunity to even have my wedding at the Lincoln Financial Field to create this new memory, this new tremendous memory that can erase some of that sadness and some of that pain. Fast forward, I went to New York University. I actually had a tuition scholarship to New York University, and it was hard. It was really hard. So I'm not even gonna pretend like I'm this huge scholar, and I got a scholarship. But when I got to school, I realized very quickly that the school system that I was a part of in Philadelphia wasn't like the school system at New York University. The curriculum was extremely rigorous, and I was not prepared for college whatsoever. I wasn't prepared for life at all. And I feel like I'm just going on with like sorrows and sorrows, but this is really my life.
Yeah.
Just to be honest with you. So after the first year in college, and I thought I actually was not going to be able to make it. I actually wanted to quit. I actually wanted to drop out of college, but I kept going because I had no choice, right? It was either make it here or go back home to Philadelphia. And at that time, it didn't feel like Philadelphia was home anyway. So what did I do? I just pretty much connected with my professors, letting them know, hey, I can't fail your class. I can't fail your class because I'm going to lose my scholarship. So making that verbal expression of what I needed from the universe helped a lot because it took a lot of weight off of myself. So, and I think a lot of times when we are going through painful things or painful experiences, we try to take it on alone. And I quickly learned at that age when I was in college that I needed to lean on people. And all of those lessons leading up to what happened at Pulse in 2016, basically, I don't want to say, well, it equipped me to deal with that moment, with all the experiences I've learned, and actually talk about it in my book. And I actually have my book that I'm going to show you guys. It's called Survive and Live, The Patient's Carter Story. So it basically talks about everything that I just talked about in segments about my life and why each of these experiences shaped me to be who I am today and to deal with the type of horror that happened at Pulse nightclub that night and why I'm even able to verbalize it the way I can today.
Wow. A lot of times, people don't really understand we don't know why we go through the things that we go through, right? And so when we sit back and we look back at our lives, we start thinking, oh my God, it makes sense now. Like the people you meet, the people that come across you in your life and all those things. And so when I think about your name, Patience, like even though your family wasn't there, like your mother wasn't there, your father wasn't there, the one thing that they did was name you something that has so much meaning, right? When you think about patience, they talk about in the Bible how patience means endurance and be able to sustain through adversity, through trauma. And like that was your life, right? So like your name fits perfect into your life story. And
Yeah.
so a lot of times, when you're going through that, situation, I'm sure it was so painful because a lot of things that we learn from our families and stuff like that, we take for granted. And, from your very beginning, it seems like you had to shape and create who you are now, trying to figure out what does love look like? Do people stay around? Are people loyal? Are they going to leave? Are they going to stay? Like, I know when I lost my brother, I have this bad anxiety right now about, like a separation anxiety. If somebody doesn't call me back, I think something's wrong, or if somebody doesn't. And so is that almost that fear. And so I really appreciate you sharing, your story from the beginning to where it's, to where you're at now, because people just see now, like, oh my gosh, she got it all together. Nobody would ever thought, and I think that where we come from is always important. So I really appreciate you sharing that vulnerability with us, because that's how we grow. That's how we grow as women. That's how we grow as men. And so I just really appreciate you sharing that story with us.
Thank you. And thank you for sharing about your brother as well. I actually lost my brother last year in March. And if anybody does watch the docu-series, Sincerely Patience, I actually have a scene with my brother Kevin, and it was the last like really emotional moment that we've ever had. And luckily, I thank God for having this wedding experience that I could get all my family together and have these moments with Kevin. And this is like, the biggest thing that ever happened to my entire family. So I was so grateful to have that experience
Yeah.
before he died. And I just felt for you when you said, the separation anxiety. Even my husband now, I'm like, where is he at? It's been
Mhm.
he hasn't texted me in like 20 minutes and stuff. So I'm a
Yeah,
very like anxious individual, but I try to balance it as best as I can.
absolutely. So we definitely have that, and we'll catch up on that experience and share that as well. Thank you.
Yes, I'm really being an academic. We are really pushed not to listen to respond, but to listen to understand. So I like to take notes when I'm on the phone with someone, whenever I'm doing an interview, whatever it may be.
Me too.
What are the things that you mentioned that was it was speaking about your experience, your mutual experience, yours and Alex's, but it it applies across life. Whereas people come together, and a lot of times one broken person will think that that other person is going to help fix them, and then that's going to make a nice relationship. So you mentioned how you had to understand that you had to work on you, he had to work on him, but the fact that you had this shared experience allowed you to understand each other and how you both were working on each other.
Mhm.
I'm really glad that you are on this platform and able to go back and tell the before story, because had you not, I would have been one of those individuals. Man, she out here just doing the dang thing. Like, obviously, I would have started with the incident at Pulse nightclub,
Mhm.
but I wouldn't have known the before. And there's so much overlap um, in your story that so many people experience. But at the same time, you mentioned in your childhood, you mentioned not having, well, for one, it's usually flipped around. The dad is not the one, and
Right.
mom. So that's very unique in and of itself. And a lot of times the mom has problems getting her stuff together. And I have a past working for child welfare. So I saw it like every single day, kids being removed from the house, having to go, okay, we got to make sure we background check this family member, that family member, this family member. And it can be very difficult. And it really helps develop who you will be as an adult, because a lot of those things, specifically in those first 7 to 8 years, that's like your internal program. Like,
Mhm.
that's the core of who you are. So going through some of these adults experience, I feel are really important to make sure you put yourself in the right place. So I got a question.
Mhm.
Pulse, that incident has been a few years. You and Alex, I'm sure that you would agree that it's not completely behind you. So, what does the day to day look like as far as flashbacks, as far as bouts of PTSD? How do you guys deal with that individually and then as a unit?
With PTSD, I feel like it's something that never has a definitive ending because the way that we're triggered always changes depending on where we are, our environment and stuff. So I live in Florida. I live in a different part of Florida other than Orlando, but just the idea of visiting Orlando is a trigger for me. So it's certain things that trigger the both of us. Conversations about Akira trigger my husband. So it's a sensitive subject that, we try to take as lightly as possible, but we also have those deep conversations about where we really are on our own journeys. That's important. You have to know where your spouse is, or whether it's your partner or somebody you love, you need to know where they are on their journey. And it's super important because you might assume, like my husband, he's a Leo, so he doesn't like to show emotion that much. But I can always tell when it's something bothering him, when it's something going on, or when he's missing his sister. And like this month, Akira's birthday is coming up, and the other day he had this look on his face, and I'm just like, what's wrong? And then he told me, but if I didn't ask, he would have never told me because he would have held that in on his own. So I think it's good to just check in on each other. That's what me and Alex do to deal with some of that PTSD trauma that comes along with pulse, and honestly, all the other trauma that we experience in our lives as well, to just try to be there for one another, no matter what.
Got you. Just kind of just going back to the fact that, like you mentioned, most people don't care about the before story. They just want like the incident up. Being in the entrepreneurial space, I'm all about helping people utilize their traumatic past to tell their story, to be a part of what they're meant to do as far as discovering their purpose. That's why we really wanted to entitle this session like "My Life on Purpose." So, in that specific regard, do you ever do any type of public speaking when it comes to telling your story? And if so, what is the balance as far as people wanting you to tell your before story and wanting to tell the nightclub forward story?
That's a great question. So it depends on the medium and whoever is basically the person asking the questions or reaching out to me, because a lot of the times, honestly, over these past couple of years, I've learned that a lot of people just want to use you for your story so they can get the clickbait, or they can get, a certain amount of traffic to their channels. And then, and the flip side of it, in the conversation, in the actual interview, who I am as a person never really comes up. So I'm at the space where I am in 2021 where I kind of just want to move on. Like, I just kind of want to be Patience Murray. So I legally changed my name just so I could be a whole new person. Like, I'm a wife now. I could have kept my last name. I could have kept Carter, but I just wanted to reinvent myself entirely. And everything that I want to talk about at this stage in my life is positivity. I just want to speak that into other people, because I feel like when I speak it into other people, it's putting that karma, it's putting that good energy into the universe that always ends up coming back somehow, some way when you least expect it. And that's the goal. The goal isn't to, and that's a goal for anybody, really. I feel like when you go through these traumatic experiences, you shouldn't be forced to be a victim forever. You shouldn't be forced into this victim mentality for the media, or for social media, or for your own social media. You can grow, and you have permission to grow. And I just had to give myself permission to grow, because I was allowing myself to be put into this box of the survivor of this, right? The survivor of that. When really, I'm a survivor of many, many things. Many, many things. I've been surviving since Philadelphia. If anybody ever grew up in North Philadelphia or West Philadelphia, it's survival. So I've always been surviving my entire life. And I just feel like I'm at the point where I want to live now. I don't want to survive. I don't want to be labeled as the survivor. I just want to be patient. And I want people to take me for where I am now. And I have so much to offer, like so much insight, just so many things I've learned just in these few years alone, that I feel like shape who I am today. And I love to share that. And I actually toured with the Moth, their storytelling, group. So they basically pick different people to share their story on stage in front of like a live audience. I did the show in Ohio, I did the show in Boston, and then like when COVID hit and everything, so it was just like a standstill. But I would still be doing that. So to answer your question, yes, I do public speaking, and yes, I love to talk to people. I love to instill encouragement, support, love, because I know I needed it.
Yeah. And like you said, a lot of people like to put you in a box, and they want to keep you there. Like it's like, okay, I want to get out of this box now. And so a lot of times we feel like, because we feel like it starts becoming who we are, right? Like, am I anybody outside of the shooting? And so that's one of the reasons why when I reached out to you, I saw you guys as a unit. And I always call him B, but Streaks for the show purposes. I told Streak, I said, hey, I want to get them on the show. He was like, okay, cool, let's book them or whatever. And he came up with the title for y'all. And I was like, no, like I want to have her by myself. Okay, because everybody just sees the story, and I was like, I want to know her. Like, I want to know her experience, what she feels, as an individual, because a lot of time as women, we have to always endure not only our own pain, but we suck in the pain of others. We feel like we have to carry the burden on our shoulders because we feel like we're stronger and God made us that way and we're just tough. And so, and it's not always true, because we have to learn to deal with our own stress and our own hurt and our own whatever it is. So I really appreciate you again, sharing that with us. So when you went through all this stuff, just from beginning to end,
Mm-hmm.
what was that one thing that was like that whoa moment? Like, you know what? I'm changing this shit. I'm flipping it. Like this is who I am. I know who I am. Like, what was it that got you to that place? Was it like just a moment? Was it just like what was it that light bulb went off? Like, no, this is who I am, and this is what I'm going to pursue. What was that like?
You know, when my brother died, it was so unexpected. It was just so unexpected. And honestly, when you think about like Pulse and like it's a mass shooting, and like that so many people lost their lives, and that situation changed me too, but it changed me for the worst in a lot of ways because I became more anxious. Became more scared just of life and scared of stepping outside of that box that people were putting me in as well. So like physically and mentally, I was scared. Um, and then when my brother died, the only thing I could think of was thank God he had a chance to be there for those moments right before he died. And thank God we had a chance to have that bond and have that time and spend it together before he passed away. And it made me wonder how, the days go by and the days go by. I have all these thoughts, all these ideas, all these big dreams inside of my head. And it's selfish of me to keep them to myself because when I think about the experience that I had with my brother, you know, even though it necessarily wasn't, his wedding, it was a moment that we all shared as a family that brought
That
us
was
together.
positive. Mm-hmm.
And now I feel like I have to be that person in my family that continues to make big things happen, to bring our families together and have these moments because my brother is gone now. He's only 34. And that's not something that I mentally could process. I always expected to see my brothers and sisters there with me to the end. Whenever I finally decided to do all the big things I want to do, I knew they would just be around, ready to support me. I know that's not the case. I know that I'm not, my siblings aren't safe just because of what happened to me. And it actually, changed a lot of things. It changed a lot of things inside of me. Now I feel like I have to go harder. I have to go harder now. I have to live my life now. I can't just keep, straddling the fence or playing it safe. No, afraid of what people are going to say or people are going to think. And if you think, and people go through experiences and you think they would have got it then, or they would have got it in 2 years ago or 3 years ago, you thought they would have gotten it. But sometimes it takes something totally unexpected to be the thing that pushes you into your destiny.
Yes, man, that's so much real.
Yeah.
So much real. And I love you. I love when you mention that, okay, yes, that happened to me. That was my story. That's part of what brought me to where I am now. But I'm patience bird now. Like it's the future. That's where I'm going. The positivity. That's what I'm about now. So we're a little past so halfway point. So what is patience currently doing? What are some of your current endeavors, the things that really get your engine turning today?
Well, just from COVID alone, I think everybody realized how important it is to own your own business and become an entrepreneur and learn financial literacy. And that's kind of, the track that I'm on right now of learning more about real estate. This is an exclusive because I have not said anything about anything about real estate publicly, but I'm learning more about it. And actually, my brother, before he died, he actually started to learn more about real estate investing. And then I have another brother, Terrell. He actually encouraged me to learn more about real estate. So I felt like it was time for me to learn something new, challenge myself. But other than that, I do have a passion for film. I have a passion for film and writing creatively. So one day I hope to own my own production company and produce different narratives, different stories, different documentaries for people like myself who maybe not have had their full story told, or maybe they have a story and nobody knows it or nobody cares to ask what their story is. I want to find out what those stories are, and I want to illuminate them and bring them to the public and let people know how amazing so many people are, and not just people, but young people too. It's young people out here going through some really hard stuff on their own, and they're bouncing back. And I think we have a generation that's starting to empower themselves and starting to really become their own bosses. And I love that, and I wanna shine a light on people doing stuff like that. And in addition, writing more books. So I have survived and lived the Patience Carter story. And it was very strategic why I said the Patience Carter story, because I feel like my story is completely different now. My story is changing. And I feel like there's another book on the way. I just haven't, really put it into words yet. So another book is definitely on the way. And the podcast. So I have a Healing Her Halo podcast. It's a podcast that's geared towards women. I think men can learn something from it if they listen to it, but it's mainly geared towards women, and it's for trauma survivors, women trauma survivors. It's an empowerment podcast. We talk about different issues that pretty much are hard to talk about. The first episode was with Kalei Stewart. She's an actress, producer, and she actually has her own film coming out soon, 29 Eggs, but she and I actually had a conversation about infertility. So, just a side note, my husband and I were trying to have a baby since we had first got married, but it didn't happen. And that hurt my, self-confidence, self-love a little bit, and it was a struggle. So, and it still is a struggle because it still hasn't happened yet. But that's what we talk about, issues like that, things that are hard to talk about with other people other than women. So check it out. And yeah, right now helping my husband with his business, Wild Ice Frozen Treat Company, based in South Florida. He actually makes the product himself and he distributes it to other people. So that's fun. Learning more about that. But just becoming my own boss and just walking into the destiny that God has for me is where I am right now in my life.
That's awesome. I mean, again, go ahead.
A few points, and I want to make sure me or you mentioned this. We had a past guest that is a award-winning film producer, independent film production company. So we may be able to make the connection for you.
I would love that. Yes, I'm always open to connect with other people, especially if it's divine timing. And like right now, I think it is. Absolutely.
Exactly. Good deal. And one more. What part of South Florida is the ice company, Frozen Treats?
So our headquarters is actually in Hollywood, Florida, but we distribute everywhere. We ship. We actually ship to Philadelphia a lot. So it's wildiceco.com. You can check it out. We just added some pizza pretzels. So we have the Philadelphia pretzel, but it has different customizations, and we also have a vegan pizza pretzel that's really good. So you guys can check it out.
Got it. I asked because I used to live in Miami, and I still my business partner and I, we travel down to the Fort Lauderdale area on a frequent basis. So we got to bring some business to you.
And just try it. Even if it's not about business, if you just want to try it, we love for you to try it because it's really good. He's done so well with it. I'm super proud of him, and it's just like it's going to be our family business itself.
Yeah. Well, we are about supporting us, so we going to.
Patience, I'm just so excited about you, and we don't have to be in a rush to discover everything about ourselves. And sometimes we feel like that. I know I'm like that. I'm like, okay, I'm almost 40, I'm running out of time. I need to do this, that. I have trying to have it all figured out. But you're just amazing inside out, just from the small time that we've got to share. And I listen to your podcast, and I'm excited. I'm excited about you. I'm excited about going on this new journey with you and seeing whatever he's doing in your life. We're going to go ahead and claim the baby. We're going to claim all that. Okay. So that'll definitely happen, because obviously up until right now, everything has planned out for you not perfectly, but it has planned out in perfect timing. And it's not, like he said, it's not always in our time, but you're just amazing, and I want you to continue to just be you and sharing your story with us. And I definitely want to make sure that we connect. And we're gonna have some laughs and some cries, but I get it, And so I will make sure that we make it a point to check on you, because like you said, a lot of times people see us as just being this strong, the strong Black woman, got it all, got it all together, just because we can go and slap something on our head and a little bit of makeup and everybody thinks that everything looks, man, that girl got it going on, right? But we have some other stuff that we have to deal with on our own time. And so we definitely going to, continue to share that bond with each other and share our stories. But Patience, we're just so excited now. Where can people find you? Where can they go get your book so that we can make sure that everybody's doing their part with supporting who you are, what you're doing?
Well, you can go to survivethenlive.com. That's pretty much where you have the podcast access, you have the book access, but the podcast is available on Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio. It's available everywhere. And my personal Instagram is at PAE Carter. So the first, face that comes up, it looks like this one is me at PAE Carter.
All right. Street, did you get her website? Okay, look, he on it.
That's pretty good.
So please make sure you go out and buy her book, hear her story, and support what she's doing. Follow her on Instagram. And again, don't get caught up in the pictures. Get the book so you can see the whole journey. A lot of times, there you go, right there. Got the pretty face on the front of it. So please make sure you go out and buy her book. We will continue to support and shoot out all your information. And so we're just claiming it in 2021. And I'm excited for you, and I'll be here to watch front row. And we thank you for being a part of the Black Podcast and sharing your story and being so vulnerable so that we all can grow through our own pain. So thank you so much for that.
And thank you for having me. I love what you guys are doing.
Thank you.
I love it. I love it.
So just to wrap up on my end, because I know I see the female bond happening here.
Well, it's just that men always being on here, and then they have they get to share about their beards, and I get to just sit back and listen. So
yeah. I'm thankful for you for continuing to push forward and be that example that regardless of the pain that you experience in life, from childhood on to this shooting and all the the just everything since that reminds you of these instances, to continue to push through and be that example, because there's lots of us that go through life and we're linearly focused and we're thinking about ourselves. I got to do this for me, this for me. We don't realize that there are people watching. There's a little girl somewhere looking at you as an example, and you don't even realize it. And who's to say, maybe when she comes to your age and you're being older, she can come up to you like, when you were on that podcast that one day, that's when I started following you, and I realized that I could actually make something out of my life too, regardless of my childhood, regardless of my traumas. So keep doing what you're doing. I'm going to make sure that we support you, and I'm not playing around when I mention the supporting your husband and his business, and we'll have his conversation later. But that molds into you as well, and that's part of us really practicing group economics. I really want us to be there for each other, and the same thing when it goes for your book. We're going to push that out as well. So,
absolutely, and I'm all here for it.
For sure. All right, Dr. Hobson. You can close.
All right, we're gonna go ahead and get you back into the backstage. We're gonna close out, and then we'll send you off. Thank you.
So hold tight for us.
Okay.
All right, everyone, please make sure you go out and buy her book, listen to her entire story, and support her business. But, here on the Black Podcast, we're all about everything being relevant, and we all experiencing different pains and having different stories through our entire life. And so I'm just so grateful that she shared her story and all her back end story with us, because a lot of people sometimes want to forget about that side too. So I'm just excited to be about Patience and the things that she has going on. And so I look like we had another successful show on the Black Podcast.
Yes. And Patience, we didn't even mention it to her, but you are our very first episode of 2021. And we're honored when we actually put it in the audio podcast version. We'll likely have some type of special celebration for this episode, that it is the first one of 2021. So off of that note, guys, we're going to continue to do this every single week. If something happens that a week passes by that you don't see our faces, call us out. We're in front of you one way or another. And we really want to bring successful Black individuals from across the world that are showing an example of what can be. Because so many of us grow up not having an example of what can be, but that which is only going to get us in a cycle of perpetual poverty, perpetual trouble, get us in and out of prison. That's all we see around us. But most of us have one of these things right here, and we can go to Facebook and watch an episode of this and get an example of what life could be.
Yeah.
So, thank you for all the viewers. Y'all make sure you share the video and just go out there and be the example yourself, because the world is watching.
Yep, always watching. So be safe, mask up, make sure that you're taking care of yourself, and see us back here next Thursday at 4 p.m. Central Time on the Black Podcast.
Yes, indeed. Y'all have a good one. See you next time.